Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel.
Okay, I've got these started, and you really don't need to follow that part in the direction where it says, you know, make this space 16.3 millimeters, because you're going to adjust that. One of the first things you're going to be doing before you run is, you know, making sure you've got camber and toe and things like that set up. And that's what you're going to be doing with this, is setting the amount of camber, which is how far the top of the tire either tilts outward or inward. So what you do want to do is make sure that you've got about an equal distance of threads on either side. And remember that when you start these, this is a turnbuckle. It's not like a regular bolt. The threads turn left on clockwise on one side and counterclockwise on the other, so that when you tighten or rotate the turnbuckle, it either pulls both together or pushes both apart. Okay, so get them equidistant, get them started, and then you can go ahead and adjust them once they're in place. Now, I would also snap these ball joints into place before mounting them. It's a lot easier to just put a pliers on here and snap it in place, clamp it down, and you know, it'll pop and snap in. Make sure you're pointing in the right direction. There's a side that's slightly wider. You want that facing inward towards the rear. And for the other side, you've got the same thing, but you want this leg to be pointing down so that there's clearance. This type, you have a ball that does not have a back nut on the side, and it's not threaded, it's just a pass-through, and that is going to go in between the uprights on the rear, I forget what they call this again. Anyway, you're going to use one of these long bolts, a lock nut, and so just follow the directions as far as those. Where you mount these is definitely important. I would follow the basic setup for positioning and just go with that. Now remember, we had some little ball sockets, some little O-rings that were supposed to go into the out drives. The way this is set up right now, the out drives are so far out that this isn't even making contact barely, so I need to look into that before I go too much further, because the shims that I'm using here, the wheelbase is so wide that these axles are barely reaching the out drives. So in other words, if I pull it out to here where it looks even perpendicular, it's barely touching. Now, you know, there's still ride height and things like that to adjust for, but you know, even with a parallel leg there, or A-arm basically, it's hardly in there. So if I had put that O-ring in, it wouldn't even be coming into play. It would just be flopping around in there. There's no point for it. So I would only use those O-rings if you've got a narrow wheelbase set up and they're actually getting in toward the insides of those drives. Anyway, I'll talk about that more a little later. Go ahead and make sure you've got the same amount of threads sticking out on either side. I've still got some adjustments to do here to make that true, and then you can bolt these in place, and I'll show you how that looks when it's assembled. Okay, I just thought I'd show you the easy way to get these in. You look for the wider side. That'll be your back side or inner side. And then you just take a pair of pliers, pop it, that gets it started, and then grab just the edge with the pliers and give it a little snap, and there you go. Same thing with this one. So I've got one linkage set up, as you can see. Just go ahead and use the stock mounting holes to start with. That's the easiest way to go. and then take your wrench and just crank down on this again and again until you are set with a where this looks more or less parallel to the ground. So you take this bolt here with a washer. This is the 14 millimeter M3. Pass it through the shock tower. And then thread it through, tighten it on down. Just gonna do this finger tight for the moment. Wait, that's gonna be the wrong size. One nice thing about this kit, you only need a handful of wrenches. It's not one of those kits that has, you know, like 6 or 8 different sizes. Everything's just a couple of different sizes. Okay, now I've just got that snug for the moment. And then we need one locking bolt and this M320 button head. And they show the button head passing in from the rear. Now remember, this rear upright is aluminum, so don't try to force this the ball in place. Just kind of line it up, and once you've got it totally straight, it will slide right in. You just have to have it aligned properly. And this one, you do not have to tighten it down very much. Just get it snug. You don't want to squeeze this aluminum upright because you'll bend it. Just get it so it's touching. You could even let it have a little bit of rotation to it, but either way it doesn't matter because that nylon lock nut is going to hang onto it. Take that O-ring that we saved, and that goes into your out drive here. Go ahead and slide it on in. And now, of course, you can't just push this dog bone in. We got to shorten this up by tightening it. And I'm not going to show you watching me just crank and crank on that. Okay, so we're on to step 15 now. Our rear suspension is together, so we're moving to the front of the chassis. And it calls for bag 4. Now we've got 2 bags with 4. We have 4A, and we have bag 4/bag 5. And the front here, we're going to be working, bag 5 comes in during this front section as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open both of these because I'm not sure where the part is I'm going to need. I got a pretty good idea it's in this bag. So I'm just going to leave this aside for the moment. And I'll start with this big bag full of stuff here, and if I come across something I need that I don't know where it is, I'll look for it in that bag 4/5. But this looks like it's going to be basically, with the exception of steering linkages, a clone of building the rear here. So it's going to start with mounting an aluminum bracket down here, setting up the A-arms with their top and bottom plates. And speaking of those plates, my carbon fiber ones came in. So I got those. these are a couple of spare pins I got left here because if you recall from earlier videos, I bought a set of plus 1mm hexes for the rear. The kit comes with 0 hexes for the rear and plus 1s for the front. So when I bought these rears, they came with a pair of pins. Now, this is something to look for. This will save you a little bit of money. There were 2 versions of the plus 1 hub or hex. The one that most of the people carried that was out of stock was one that had the wheel nuts, the 17mm wheel nuts. Now, this kit already comes with, 2 pairs of wheel nuts, so that was just an extra item included with the hexes. What I really needed were the hexes. I looked, but nobody had them in that particular packaging. And I looked around, did a few searches, and I found somebody who had the 1mm hexes in a package. I don't know the part number offhand. I'll see if I can't find that. And it was just the hexes and the pins without the bolts. So since I didn't need the nuts, I didn't need the wheel nuts anyway, that saved like $8 to $10 to just get the hexes alone. So if you want that, look for the hexes by themselves. And now I've got a spare pair of those pins in case I lose one somewhere along the way. So let's see if these are identical. Okay, no, there's 2 different pairs. So we have bottom and a top pair. These are the 2 bottoms with this little cutaway notch right here. So what I think I'm going to do first is I'm going to set these aside, the 2 top plastic ones that I'm not going to use. I'm going to break out these carbon ones, and before I start mounting stuff to the chassis, I'm just going to go ahead and get this process over with. And that's something you don't need to watch, because it's just going to be a boring process of me screwing a ton of little screws into these A-arms, or suspension arms, however you want to term them. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to get these A-arms dressed, and I will continue the video once I have all this stuff mounted and the A-arms are ready to install. Okay, so this is our rear suspension mount block for the front suspension, and there's only 2 inserts. I don't know if there's any options for these, but I'm guessing since they only included the 2, this is the only size you need. And it's obvious which ones these are because they are like a half oval that's cut off flat across the bottom. They have a marking on the back side, the number 0. So you just put those 2 on. They're going to go up here. Unlike the rear, there's no adjuster plate. I went ahead and prepped the front while I was at it. I put all the spares in this bag. They go in increments of 0.5. It starts at 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5, 11. Save the spares or the other options. They're not spares. They just give you different suspension settings, and that's gonna change your caster, or kind of like kick on an off-road car. Anyway, I went with number 9 because that is what is used on the build that I've been following, especially for the suspension settings. Then there's the 9.5, and 10 is what the stock setting recommends. So if you're totally new to this and you don't have the springs and stuff that I've got, go with the stock setting, go with 10, and then you can tinker and test and see what works best for you. So that will go up here later, but that doesn't go on there until we have arms in place and such. Make sure you check bolt sizes. These 2 bolts here for this are a 12 millimeter length. When you get to the front, you're only doing a 10 millimeter. I'm not 100% sure why the change, because it's going through the same thickness of plate, both of them into aluminum, so I'm not sure why they decided to go with something smaller. Maybe it's because this aluminum piece isn't as tall as this one. As you can see, there's a difference right here where the bolt is going to go through, but anyway, you know, the engineers came up with that. So first step here in 15 is to go ahead and put in these 2 screws and get this mounted. I'm using the wrong size there. Yep. So I have put on the panels. As you can see, I've got the carbon fibers on top and the plastic on the bottom, and looks like, I'm trying to look at the orientation on this just out of curiosity. Yeah, the sway bar attachment point here is going to go rearward, unlike the rear one which points frontward. So at this step, 16.1, we're going to go ahead and get the pieces for the sway bar attachment points, which is these guys here. So start by dropping one of these ball studs through this plastic cap. We're just going to get it started. We'll worry about the exact length a little later. So that's one. Because we can't measure the length until we've got it assembled on the A-arm. Not started properly. Okay, that one looks good. That one's a little off too. You got to apply a little pressure to these to get them started properly. Okay, and now we can pop these in just like the other ball links. Look for the wider side. Pair of pliers. These are tight. As I recall, the rear ones were really tight too. They don't require a lot of movement when they're in the car functioning, but I may look for a way to loosen these up later. We'll see how they do after the first run-in. Remember, the instructions say to drive the car for an hour after it's assembled, to break in the differentials and the ring and pinion gears in particular. So this big gear and the gear here in the front. Those kind of have to seat together, and then you're supposed to use washers, and that's going to be an interesting thing to get right. So I'll definitely do probably an entire video on that issue alone. So now I'm just going to tighten these down until they don't move, and then I will back it off until I have the right amount of movement with the ball socket. Okay, so it's snug. See, it stands up on its own. So now just back it off a little bit at a time. Okay, that's loose, but not enough. Okay, there we go. Now remember, we don't want it to be, if you can lift it up and down, if you can jiggle it, that's too loose. So I'm going to tighten it back up just a hair. Okay, so there, it can move freely, but if you jiggle it, it's not going to move at all. So that's what we want. Just need a little more. Okay. Good movement, but no up and down movement. Okay. So, next step is to put in the droop screws. And just like in the rear, these are these kind of almost a dark maroon colored anodizing or painting screw that's a button head at one side, and it has a screw head at the other, or an Allen fitting at the other end, like that. So it can be adjusted from either end. And this side is just used for the install. We're going to go ahead and screw these in. And I'm just going to do them till they come through, because they're going to have to come down a good bit anyway to make contact there. Okay, that's done. I've screwed all the plates on. Let's do our height adjustment here. We need 34 millimeters from the bottom of the control arm here to the top of the ball fitting. That's almost 36, so I need to come down a couple millimeters. Okay, got to come down 1 more millimeter. One of the main things about this adjustment here is you want them to be identical left to right, because any deviation means one of them is going to have slight change from the other. You might have a control difference, and everything is about balance. Okay, we got 34. Now I can tell just by looking that this one is going to need to be adjusted down. So before I even measure it, I'm going to go ahead and adjust that a bit. Let's see how good my eyeball was. Oh, there's a little flashing on there. I need to remove that. Otherwise, that isn't going to be accurate. Okay, there we go. So 33, almost 33.7. Wait, 33.6. So I was pretty close, 0.4 millimeters off. The old eyeball's not bad. $34 and change. Let's take that in a little bit. That's a hard thing to get. Here we go, 34 on the dot. Bingo. Okay. Okay, now this is where we're gonna might have to do a little reaming. Yeah, these are really tight. I mean, really tight.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.